Hello, everyone, and welcome to this fantastic webinar about hybrid publishing and all the things that you need to know. We are here with a lovely panel from Warren Publishing. Mindy Kuhn and Lacey Cope and Amy Ashby are here with us. And I'm going to introduce Mindy, and then she's going to introduce the other team members. And then we're going to do this question and answer style. So I'm going to ask them some questions along the way. You all will have an opportunity to ask your questions as well. We'll have reserved some time at the end for you to ask your questions and for them to answer them. So if you want to put them in the chat as we go through, we'll be checking that for your questions and we'll get to those. So without further ado, Mindy Kuhn has over 27 years of marketing design and branding experience. She holds photojournalism and journalism graphics degrees from Ball State University and a leadership in publishing certificate from the Yale Publishing course, Yale School of Management, and has worked in many aspects of advertising, marketing, and branding for companies ranging in size from Fortune 500 to small boutiques. Mindy has extensive experience in the print platform and excels at developing an author's vision into a polished, finished product. Publication design is one of her specialties, and she has earned many design and publication awards for her work. So welcome, Mindy.
Thanks. It always sounds so fancy when you read it, and I appreciate your time and being included. So we're excited. Thank you.
Absolutely, we're glad that you're here. Would you like to introduce your team members to us?
I am happy to do so. I will start by introducing Amy Ashby, who is my Vice President, Editor in Chief, and she.
Hello.
She's been with the company. Hold on. Thank you. Unfortunately, we're in the same room. She's behind me. And so we will have some echo occasionally. So I apologize in advance for any echo that comes on. But Amy has been with us 20 years, Ames, I think.
Be
quite
20
a while.
years next year. Yep.
So she's been with us 20 years, and she's editor in chief as well. So she handles all editing, our editors, I should say, acquisitions. She helps in a variety of leadership roles that way. So anyone who works with us as a company will work with both of these two lovely ladies as well. So then Lacey Cope is my marketing director, and she's been with us 5 years, Lace, I think. At least
I think we're going on 6 or 7 maybe at this point. It's been
okay.
Yes, we're ticking them up here.
So I should introduce both of these ladies as my right and left hands. Like, they are amazing. We function really well as a company together. Lacey has an amazing background in marketing and book marketing. So she fits the need for all of what we have going on. So yeah, we are so excited to have them as part of our team. And we know that our authors are very well supported by them as well. So
Sounds like a fantastic team. And I'm so glad that you are all with us today. So we're going to dive right into these questions. And first off, Mindy, what is hybrid publishing and how is it different from traditional or self-publishing?
So I'm going to make this answer a little bit more condensed, because hopefully by now folks in the women in publishing kind of world have gotten to understand a little bit about what hybrid is, as well as they've heard about us a little bit through the time. So hybrid publishing essentially is halfway in between traditional and self-publishing. So we combine the best of both worlds. We have a selective process like you would get in the traditional. We are an indie publisher, so that means we do a comprehensive publishing model. So we do everything from soup to nuts with editing, layout, design, marketing, and some books are included with distribution as well. So that's kind of I'm also introducing a bit as the start of that process that we do. But the authors can own the rights to their book, and that's similar to self-publishing. And there is a financial component as well to the process, which is similar to self-publishing.
Right. Next question. What is included with hybrid publishing specific to Warren and your general process?
So hybrid publishing, again, I mentioned what it was. We are an indie press, so we include editing, which is developmental editing, copy editing, and proofreading, all by 3 different editors. We include a professional layout and design, and through myself or one of our design team. We include illustrations if needed for a children's book, and we include some marketing as well. We are not a publicist. We are a publisher who has marketing components with us. So often authors will choose to add a publicist to their package of world, to their publishing kind of process. But we do include some marketing as well, which is where Lacey and her team kind of fit into the play. And then again, we include some distribution and some books as well in that process. So that is a general kind of arc of what our process what the little tabs are as far as what's included in our process.
That is super helpful to understand. So the next question is for Amy. And what are the most important things to remember and do when submitting a manuscript to a hybrid publisher?
Absolutely. So I would say the biggest thing that you are going to want to remember is to do your research, because every publisher and what they are looking for is going to be a little bit different. So definitely spend some time on their website, getting to know that publisher. Spend some time on their submissions page so that you know exactly what they're looking for in a submission, down to how they would like for you to format it, and if simultaneous submissions are allowed. Some publishers don't want you to submit to them if you have already submitted elsewhere. So little things like that. Definitely make sure that you know your target market and your book genre. So by target market, what I mean is, rather than telling a publisher, hey, my book is for everyone between the ages of 0 and 99, while that may be great, and everybody may love your book or may have the possibility of loving your book, it's better to be specific and niche, and don't be afraid to go too niche. An example that I like to use is the Harry Potter series, for example, right? So that book is written for middle graders, for middle school children. Lots of people love it. Adults read it, younger kids read it, right? But it was written for middle grade readers. So if you want to hit your bullseye, you need to make sure that you aim at it, right? So make sure that you know your target market. Make sure you know your genre. If you fill out a submission form and select 8 different genres, that may be a little bit of a red flag to your publisher. If you're not completely sure, just pick 1 or 2, right? It's better than 8. Something else to be cognizant of in this day and age is AI, and using that AI assistant that we have all come to love and that some of us have maybe come to rely on a little bit too heavily. Most publishers will have some kind of submission form that they want you to fill out, and I always tell folks to take those really seriously and take your time filling them out, because that information is really helpful to your publisher. And I put a lot of consideration and thought into reviewing that submission form, right? If you are just throwing in AI clips or using AI to generate your response in that submission form, or God forbid, your entire manuscript, it is going to show. It is so blatantly obvious to us. So some folks will think, oh, well, this sounds pretty good, but AI is at a point where it still sounds a lot like AI, and it is getting eerie how human it can sound sometimes. But takeaway being, AI should be used as an assistant, not a replacement. So I believe those are really the key things that I would look at.
All right, that's great. So moving on to the editing process, what all is included in the editing process? We get this question a lot.
Yes, absolutely. So good question. So I think when a lot of folks think about editing, they are just thinking about what we call SPAG, so spelling, punctuation, grammar, and spelling, punctuation, and grammar. The A is the and. But it's so much more than that. At Warren Publishing, the vast majority of our books actually go through 3 separate editors. So you'll have your developmental editor, which is your broad strokes editing. So everything from the book's structure to, if it's fiction, the plot structure, character development. If it is nonfiction, say a self-help book, things like, does your book contain a lot of bulleted lists? Does it include exercises at the end of the chapter, and should it? So all of those broad stroke kind of things. It will then go through a copy and line editor, which is narrower in scope. So they are going to be looking at grammar and punctuation and spelling, but also sentence structure. So line editing refers to editing at the sentence level and looking for what I like to call music in writing. So making sure that each line sounds good when it's read aloud, right? So that when you're sitting in your book signing and your book reading, everything is going to sound, nice and flow well. And then the last step would be your final proofreader. So that is that SPAG that we're talking about. So that catching your spelling and grammar and punctuation, and adherence to the Chicago Manual of Style, which is our industry style guide, that includes things that are sometimes gray areas, everything down to, whether or not you use a comma before the word to, T-O-O, when it's at the end of a sentence, right? Chicago Manual did away with that comma about 10 years ago, which a lot of folks don't realize. So little things like that, making sure that everything is polished to perfection. One other thing that I will mention there is a lot of times I'll receive submissions from folks and they say, hey, my mother is an English teacher and she edited my book for me, so my book doesn't need to be edited. All respect to your mama. We love English teachers. We love when folks have their books looked at by English teachers, by friends who are really strong in grammar, to help you proofread it, because you want your manuscript to be as polished as possible before you submit it to a publisher. However, if that person is not a professional book editor, there is a difference. They might not know to look for certain nuances of your book's genre, of the marketplace, for adherence to Chicago Manual of Style, etc. So yes, every book that has ever been submitted to us has required some level of editing and or proofreading.
So because each book is a bit different, what can an author expect in terms of timeline for their book?
Yeah, so the key word there is different. And it is different for every book. A lot of that comes down to your book's genre, or the level of editing necessary for your unique book. And that is not necessarily a reflection on you as a writer, right? A lot of folks think, oh, well, my book needs a developmental edit. Is that because I'm a bad writer? No, not necessarily. It may be that you are a newer author, or that the marketplace has moved in, what folks are looking for in the marketplace has moved in a slightly different direction, and your editor knows more of the nuances there. So little things like that, right? So, other things that may, and I am going to get to the actual timeline, but other things that may affect that timeline include the timing surrounding marketing. And this is something that Lacey can attest to, that depending on your book's subject, let's say that you have a book about relationships, Valentine's Day may be a great book for your, or a great time for your book to release, right? So that may affect your book's launch. At Warren, that timeline can be anywhere from roughly 10 months out to about 18 months. Is what's typical for us. With bigger traditional publishers, you may see 18 months to several years, depending on their marketing plans and process. With a self-publishing house, if you're publishing through Amazon, it can be lightning fast, but bear in mind that lightning fast tends to result in more errors, inaccuracies. Hastily produced work looks like hastily produced work. So while it can be, not as fun to have to wait sometimes it is for good reason, particularly in the strategic marketing of your book.
Thank you. Those were great answers, super helpful. I'm going to come back to Mindy
Absolutely.
now.
Thanks.
So following editing would be the layout and design process. In the hybrid process, do authors get to have a say in the look and feel for their book?
Had to remember to unmute myself. Apologies. Yes, actually, in our particular process, we work with our authors directly to have we have those conversations because, again, part of hybrid is engaging and working with authors. So, but keep in mind, we are the professionals and have the experience in the industry. So while an author could come to us, I have a few great examples. I had an author come to us recently, and she is doing a poetry book, really cool work of poetry. And she had an idea of doing just black cover with gold foil, and beautiful idea. Gold foil is not one of our printing options as far as what we're capable of doing, but it also didn't really fit with her theme of her book. So she had these really great images that she had taken that we're utilizing on the inside. So I said, hey, that's a great idea. However, let me show you some options as well that I think could utilize some of what you're intending on the feel of some of these images. So I was able to kind of combine some of her thoughts with the black and white, but I put some really cool images that she had already taken on the inside and utilized that for the cover. And she just loves it. So, but then she got back to me and was like, I had pulled kind of a lime green accent to use on the spine and the flaps on the cover. But she was like, I really love ballet pink, like that soft pink with it. Can we do something like that? And I absolutely. So we went back and forth, and we had a really beautiful cover that came out of it. And it was where she had some really strong ideas as far as what she just originally had, like, this is what I thought. And then we kind of bounced back and forth and worked together to model, like, a beautiful cover that really fit her work as well. So yes, we work with the author in those in the look and feel of the book, as well as in that hybrid. In the editing process, we also go back and forth, and the editor works with the author to be able to incorporate some of their tone with the edits as well. So we, all the way through each step of the process, we work with the authors to make sure their vision is still incorporated within the capacity. Sometimes we could say, what, that's a great idea. However, marketability, it's not, it's a little bit out of modern trend perhaps, or we've got some things that we can modify it a little bit to make it stand out more in the market. So we, yes, all the way through we work with, and that's a beauty of hybrid, is that we do work with the authors. But again, in regard to one of the earlier questions about, and we'll talk about it later, but about vanity, you may get some engagement in vanity, but again, they're more apt to just execute everything that you want to do. We are not vanity is a very kind of old, it's negative, it's an old phrasing, and it's more of a service provider, execute everything that you want, and not selective. So hybrid is a very different model. So I want to make sure that I kind of continue that phrasing throughout, that hybrid is different. It is very engaging, but again, we're professionals, and we do kind of have some of that backing for sure, years of experience in what we do with our content and our work.
That's a great clarification. Thank you, Mindy. So, Lacey, I'm going to move on to you now with a few questions. Everyone's favorite topic, marketing, right? Since marketing comes at the end of the publishing process, can you talk about what things authors can do early to get started on their marketing?
Yeah, so one of the really great things about how our process works and stuff too is that I do talk to our authors oftentimes a little bit kind of towards that layout time when their book is getting laid out. One of the things that we discuss is those, preparation steps that you can be making ahead of time, because marketing is not something that you want to put off till the last minute either. So one of the things that we discuss is everything from, creating social media. Do I need a website? If so, what do I need? And those types of things. So we talk about that. And social media is a big one that you can start early on in the process. My biggest recommendation to folks when they're trying to decide how to start up social media if they don't have any already to begin with is to just recommend that they create an author page. So like your first and last name and author. You want it to be kind of general, because if you ever do write any more books, you don't want it to be specific, your handle to be specific to just one book, because then you have to create another page when the next book comes out and redo all that hard work that you did to start with. So that is like a huge thing that people ask me about all the time. Another thing is there's so many options out there for social media too. Where do I need to be? Where do I belong? There is no right or wrong answer necessarily there. There are some places that bookstores and media outlets and stuff like that are more prevalent. Most of them have a Facebook page. Most of them have an Instagram page. And the reason why you're creating social media is for your readers and also for those places too, so that you can share the things that you're doing and self-promote on there as well. So social media is kind of an important step in the process, and we help guide you through that. It's a collaborative effort from the start. And that's one of the really cool things about hybrid. As far as the website goes, that depends on whether or not, you need to have a website going into this or not. It depends on whether you plan to write more. Do you have enough content for a website? I mean, there's a lot of things that go into play there. Again, with a website, we also recommend that you don't tie your website to your title. And the reason why is if you write something else, you can't have that on the website then. So it's always a good idea to go with your first and last name if that's available. If that's not available, first and last name author, or first and last name writes. Okay, that's kind of a very important process. And then also knowing your audience, like who are the people that are in your space that are going to support and buy your book. Have those lists ready to go and have a decision as to how you want to let them know that you're starting this process. That's a huge thing that people don't always come to us with that list ready, and they're kind of surprised at that point. But that's a huge area of support that you can do ahead of time. And then of course, in addition to that, your target markets and knowing what your target markets are. And that doesn't necessarily mean, you can't have, it's okay to dream big and stuff and to say, well, I want my book to be available in New York City and all that stuff. Well, what is your tie to New York City? That type of stuff. Be thinking that type of stuff through when you're choosing those markets, because there's some markets that aren't necessarily going to be the best fit for you. And you want to make sure that you're honing in on the areas that are your best fit. So like where you have support or where you could get support in those areas, because those are where you want to kind of focus. And that's pretty much everything there.
Those are some great tips. Thank you, Lacey. So, this next question is a two-parter. So, how long does marketing support last? And then, can you tell us the roles of the author and the roles of the publisher in that process?
Yeah, of course. So marketing support lasts with us for as long as your book is with us, basically. Usually the first year is when you need the most marketing help, because that's when you're kind of laying the groundwork for everything. So from the time that your book, from a little bit, couple months before your book launches through the first year, that's kind of the hottest time, basically. So we're in contact a lot. I always tell folks, I'm like, you're going to probably get a little bit sick of hearing from me, but that's a good thing. And I always tell them, please bombard me with all the questions, because that way I know that you're working too. Because like Mindy was kind of touching on and Amy was touching on earlier, one of the greatest things that I see with going hybrid is the collaboration process of this. We play an active role with you, you play an active role with us, and it's a lot of us helping each other. And that is probably one of my favorite parts of the process. So I always like to say, we open lots of doors for you, but as the author, you're going to have to walk through some of those doors. So that's kind of how I sum that up. And then there's a lot of stuff that we do, for you that's included, in your contract, like for instance, writing your press release, announcing the book on our website, creating a sell sheet or a one page for you, doing bookstore placement calls, and business cards or bookmarks and a poster. So there's lots of stuff that we do for you to help you in the promotion process as well.
Awesome. And so you kind of, I think, may have answered this, but do you offer everything that you would need on the marketing side for an author to launch their book? You mentioned all these great things that you definitely need.
Yeah. Sorry, I jumped ahead a little bit. But yeah, we offer just everything that you could possibly need. And one of the really great things too, and like I kind of touched on earlier, is we stay in constant communication too, because I always tell my authors during our first call that there's really no such thing necessarily as a bad idea. And I'm here to be kind of your sounding board to help kind of steer the ship. And so we do talk a lot about, different things, and every author has a different goal. Every genre has, different markets that work better for it than others. And so everything's a little different. And that's what makes my days so very interesting, is because it's never the same thing over and over again. We kind of tailor it to each author and each book too, because we have lots of authors who cross genres too, which is super exciting as well. So it's not always going to be the same ride each time.
That's great. And I feel like there might be some questions coming about the cross genre thing for tips on that as well, because I know that's something we get a lot of questions about.
Yeah. And then the other thing, and I forgot to mention this too, is like Mindy said a little bit earlier, one of the things that we get asked oftentimes too is, do I need a publicist as well? Because we are different than a publicist. A publicist is somebody who helps kind of handle booking and all that stuff. It's a little bit more scheduling and making sure that you get events lined up and stuff like that. We help you with that as well. But sometimes our authors get to the point where they're so overwhelmed, or they have a job that, they do during the day besides just the promotion part. And so it works well with them to work with a publicist as well to kind of help organize and steer that. It takes some of the load off of the author of kind of keeping those plans. So that's something to keep in mind as well.
Great idea. So this next part is something that we also get a lot of questions about: reviews. Why are reviews so important, and how do they play into all of the things that we've talked about already? And then also, can you advise us about the two types of reviews, consumer versus critical?
Yeah, of course. So reviews play they play a very important role in promotion, the promotional side of your book. Once it's launched, it helps us, it helps you to be able to go to places like bookstores and stuff like that with reviews in hand. And that leads me to the two different types of reviews. So there's consumer reviews, which are ones that are written by folks who have read your book, who aren't necessarily industry professionals. Typically, those are not paid for reviews. And then there's the critical reviews, which are reviews that are written by the industry professionals. And those ones are typically reviews that you've paid for. And they're typically done by folks that people in the industry recognize, like, Kirkus or NetGalley, stuff like that. So it's kind of both of them, a combination of both of them is very important. Reviews help with algorithms, like especially on Amazon. If your book is up on Amazon, which all of our books are on Amazon, they help potentially with the algorithm once you get to around 50 or more reviews. I always tell people that's one of the hardest parts in the marketing process. Everybody always says, well, everybody that I know, love, and supports me is going to leave a review. But for some reason, getting them to actually take that step and leave a review can be the hardest part of the process. So we kind of talk about how to go about, asking for those, and getting those numbers to kind of up, because you want to get better placement, obviously, on different sites, and there's lots of different sites where reviews can be left.
All right, so we've got some really great questions here in the comments, so I think we're going to go ahead and jump into those. Mindy, do you want to kind of start taking the questions as you see them?
I would love to. Thank you so much. I've been trying to shoot quick answers as Lacey's been answering these wonderful other questions. So, but I thought, some of these could maybe be easier answered in a quick range. So Christine asked if we could tell us about the pricing for specific services. Is it a package deal or a la carte pricing? So for what we do as a hybrid, and I know some hybrids, it's kind of the weird situation where hybrid publishing is so new that some people who are hybrids do things a little differently in their pricing structure than others. I can speak for ourselves. What we do not offer a straight package, so to speak, where you say, I want package A, can you do that? And the reason is because, and we have a range from the get-go, and when we send a contract to our author potential person, after we've reviewed the submission and we say, oh gosh, we really want to work with Susie Q, we send a contract, and that will include the pricing, the breakdown, all the specifics. So you're not going to get a range in that situation. You're going to actually have a contract with a set price. And the reason we do that is because, for example, a children's book may need illustrations. Illustrations, I go through a broker, and they tend to be a bit costlier than maybe a poetry book that has 50 pages. So there's situations, or maybe a book that is a novel where it needs a little bit more developmental editing on it, but it's really got some great art, some great structure, some great writing, but we need a little bit more to develop maybe the ending or whatnot on it. So our ranges are, I believe, between 9 and 11,000 at the moment, give or take. And again, if it needs some extra developmental, we may, have that conversation with the author and say, we need some extra. Or if it comes in and the author hasn't disclosed that they've used AI, and we have accepted and gone through the process, and we can come back and say, we still want to work with you. We see a lot of AI usage. We have two choices. You can rewrite this, or we can help develop it, but there's going to be an extra cost on things too. Like again, some of it depends on if the author has disclosed maybe an AI usage, but typically we're going to say most of the time, they're upfront in the beginning, and that's not the case at all. So I hope that answered a little bit on the costing question. we do have some quote a la carte pricing on some extra marketing add-ins at the end. And that's if you want to do maybe some extra outreach to like a national plan. We include some things, of course, with it, but we've got some extra things that are like, hey, here's some extra maybe add-ins that if you do want to add, you don't have to. You can never buy another thing. I've had authors do the process and never buy another book, never, whatever. And that's great. And that's completely fine. But we'll also occasionally come to you and say, hey, we've got this event. If you want to participate, you're welcome to, you don't have to. So, there's some things there that they can pay additional if they want to, but we don't ever hound people to do that type of thing. It looks like Malia wants to know if we offer publicity work separate from publishing. No, I do not. We are a publisher, so the marketing we include is for our books primarily. I don't do marketing specific to books that are not published with us. We do. If somebody wants an editing only, that is the only service that I would offer a la carte, so to speak, is if somebody is looking to pitch to a bigger traditional house or an agent or something to that end, or maybe they do want to self-publish and they're just interested in editing. That is something that, we do offer kind of on the separate as a service, but that's like kind of a sideline item, so to speak. If you want editing only, absolutely, we can do that. But all the other pieces and parts we don't offer as a separate thing. Looks like Sandra, I'm not sure how it's pronounced. I apologize if I messed up the pronunciation. She is asking, and it looked like Amy already answered, but she is asking about an author out there with a name in that particular genre. How do I distinguish myself? Should I choose a pen name, essentially? And Amy said you don't necessarily need to include a pen name, but you could include a middle initial or a nickname. Pen names can occasionally be tricky from marketing's perspective. So I do think that is a great point to point out. So
yeah, Lacey, could you maybe elaborate on why that can be tricky from a marketing perspective?
Pen names can end up being a little bit difficult from a marketing perspective, because a lot of times especially when your publisher has put out a press release or something like that, 9 times out of 10, a reporter, if they want to do a story, they want to interview you, they're going to look you up first and kind of just make sure that there's no red flags out there. And so if you write under a pen name and there's not a way to search to find out that you are in fact a real human being, that can sometimes be a little bit difficult. So your build pre-marketing for that, you need to establish a presence under that pen name first, so that when they Google it, they can find you, essentially. So that can be really tricky and tough, and where publicists might come in and help out a little bit more, because that's a whole lot more groundwork that you have to lay for them to be able to find you, basically.
I will say, I'm going to jump in on that and say Frida McFadden is the anomaly in that particular situation. She self-published. And so when she started, she self-published her books and kind of built something. And she still writes. Frida is not her name. I mean, I'm sure everybody knows this, but Frida is not her name. And she's a practicing physician. And so but I've seen her, she was quiet for a long time, and I've seen her out more doing publicity lately. And she still, wears the wig and the glasses, and it goes by Frida. So, but she also had a string of successful self-published books. So by the time she got into the mainstream, she had already started to get to be known by her name. So I just wanted to pop that in, because occasionally things kind of can work in a different way about it. But she is really right now in the industry a big example of, like, you can still get there with that. Same thing with the lady who wrote 50 Shades of Grey, like that. And I can't remember her name off the top of my head because it's Wednesday at 2 o'clock almost. But she also, I believe, started self-publishing first. So again, the moral of the story is you start to build that following, and then, you can call yourself anything, and people are going to find you. So I'm going to keep chugging along, if I can, because I know we're getting close on time ish. I mean, we still have some time. Maybe I'm off, but Amanda has said this has been an interesting conversation, so thank you. She says, I'm curious to hear about how the publishing industry has changed over the past, 20 to 25 years. We've been in business a really long time. So, we know 25 years. Even just a few years ago, self-published novels were looked down upon, but that seems to be changing rapidly as authors are able to bring those titles to traditional publishing in a variety of genres. And then she named a few of the authors, and she says, how do you think that might impact publishing in the future? So great question. You could do a whole seminar on the change over time on this. I have owned the company in 10 years. So let's break down even that time period from 25 years to even 10. We can cut that in half and say what's changed in 10 years. In 10 years, so yes, we've seen hybrid become more. When I first took over the company, nobody knew anything about hybrid. And we were literally one of the first few. In the things that I had attended, people are like, okay, I don't really know what you do, but great, that sounds nice. To now, there's several folks that are in the business that are very reputable as well, and that are they have really strong portfolios and are doing really amazing things. So it's nice to see the industry have folks that are out there that are continuing to build on that great name. And there are still folks who are operating as kind of the vanity and calling themselves hybrid. So it's come a long way, but it still is. There's still some movement to be had. But in regards to your general question about self-publishing then versus now, some of the stigma is still there. So I also own a wine bar, bookstore, restaurant, which is great, by the way. But I'm able to see on the bookstore side of things how other bookstores are buying, how our consumers are purchasing. And the cool part is consumers don't always care if it's self-published or not, or if it's published by a small artist, more of an indie publisher. They don't care. What they care about is the content. What they care about is the at least on first blush, the great cover, all those things. So if you do a self-published book and you do it well, meaning you have it edited professionally, designed professionally, spend the time behind doing these things to make your book professional on all levels in the industry, then you have opportunity to continue to develop and grow your market, if that makes sense. So I think it's just to say self-publishing in general is well received. Bookstores are still very critical of buying books that are self-published, because they think they are still equating it to, hey, I wrote something, maybe I used AI, I threw it on some quick print, and here you go, buy it from me. And so they are still critical of acquiring that. But if you can pitch it to them in the way that they are seeing a professional piece as far as visually, they're going to read it. So you want to make sure, again, it's a well-edited professional piece that way. Then those pieces, if they're self-published, their bookstores will be buying them. So I think that's the key, is how you present your self-published piece is how it's going to be received in the market. So I hope that answers a little bit. Right now, we're in a publishing world of Goldilocks. And I used to say Cinderella, but essentially the purpose is there's something for everybody. So Goldilocks is probably more applicable in the analogies. But So there's something that fits your need. If you're looking to do something and you have a limited budget, then maybe you stick to the traditional angles of things. Maybe you stick with really trying to find a traditional agent, and you say, I don't have a budget. I have to do it this way. Maybe you have the background, and you've got a writing that you're able to do that. So that's the option for some folks. And maybe other folks are like, I have a budget, I am on a timeline, and I have a budget to be able to do, to do certain things. And maybe they're part of the industry, like Sanderson, Brandon Sanderson. I think, am I saying his name right? I believe. I don't read that genre, but so he self-published recently, and he's an author. He knows his industry. He has all the pieces and parts in place. He already has a following that's immense. So why do you need a traditional house or a publisher at that point? Publish it yourself, and you kind of cut that middleman. So that's great aspect for him. And then the hybrid, I have authors who actually, one of our authors is she's published 25 books, and I think something to that end. And she did it was several years ago, but it was called the Friendship Pie and the Friendship Cake series. And it was a big series. It was New York Times bestselling author. So she's been published as a matter of fact, Maya Angelou wrote one of the praise sections in her book in the beginning. So she's been in that business. She's been a New York Times bestselling author. And she came to us on a hybrid level because what she wanted was more engagement back and forth. The genre, we just did her second book, which is a cozy mystery, which kind of was a little different than the first one she did. And it was the other one we did was kind of magical thinking or mystical magical thinking, which was very different than her previous books. So she wanted hybrid because she wanted the engagement. She wanted to get it to press. The traditional, that wasn't a genre they were particularly interested in at the time, again, mass marketing wise. So she found the value in going to a hybrid for that. So again, those are three situations, and maybe kind of said quickly, but where I think it fits to go self-published, to go traditional, or to go hybrid. And it depends on what your needs are and where you personally are in your writing journey as well. So Amanda, I don't know if I answered fully, but that was what I was trying to get to. So Lisa said she's currently using Atticus while writing. Is this acceptable for a submission, or is Word preferred? Amy, I'm assuming, are you familiar with Atticus?
Word is the bird. Bird is the word. No. I am familiar with Atticus. I will tell you that most publishers are going to prefer Microsoft Word, not only for its prevalence, but for its ease of use, and the editing tracking function on Microsoft Word is the best that I have personally seen. I could go into all the other little nuances. Like I promise I could probably talk your ear off for an hour about this. But one thing that I will say is with programs like Google Docs, for example, that are a living document. And what I mean by living document is it's online, so multiple people can be editing it at the same time. That is an editor's worst nightmare right there. So a lot of these newer like word processing software programs that are online, personally as an editor make me kind of nervous. So I would definitely prefer Microsoft Word because it allows us to save different versions. It allows us to email documents back and forth, which for some of our younger authors, they're like, oh, that's very old school of you. It's like, oh, but necessarily so. That's the very short version.
Thank you. I saw that you answered two in the questions, so I appreciate you for saying that again. I'm just skimming through some of the other little notes back and forth. Somewhere I saw, how do we select the books for our Pipevine which is our traditional side of things. Right now, we're a few years out in those, so I am not accepting anything through Pipevine. We kind of do the same selection process generally, although I really try to stay away. I say stay away from children's books, although I've done a couple of one in particular recently. So right now I'm not accepting it probably for the next 2 years. So because we've got already books kind of lined up in that. So I'm going to jump over that question. I saw another one on here. Somebody had asked, and I think it jumped around, but somebody had asked about children's books including illustration. Yes. Most of our books include the illustration. What we do is we work with a few different brokers. And so we ask our authors, hey, give us some samples from books that you like. So, hey, I love the style in those Bruce books with the bear. I love Bruce books. Those are so cute. But they pull some examples of maybe some artists that they enjoy the style with, they like it, and then we will go on and help match that style as close as we can with some artists we have available. Or we can send them to a couple of the sites with my brokers, and they can review some of their artists, and then we go back to the broker and say, hey, depending upon availability for these artists, can you tell me which of these may fit well with timing and budget? So we can go a couple of different ways on that, but we do sometimes authors come with an artist, and in that case we would vet what that quality visually looks like and make sure that it kind of matches with marketability. Otherwise we absolutely are, we just look at your manuscript, and we definitely would still edit your children's book, and then we would work on working with the author to help target what their visual idea is, and then we work with brokers on that. So that's a good thing. I saw some other help me, anybody, Ames. I think help me if I'm missing anything, but I think we've whipped through most of the questions. Oh, Anne just sent us a question. Hi, Anne. I feel like I'm on a public radio show. Hi, Anne. Thank you for being the next caller. So Anne's question, sorry. If you hire a developmental editor to help get your manuscript into shape before bringing it to you, would you still have to go through developmental editing again with you? Great question. And the answer is maybe. It depends on your developmental editor. And this sounds like really bad to say it like that, but sometimes people will hire a developmental editor, and I'm going to go ahead and say it, and I'm not saying this is your case, Anne, by any means, but sometimes they hire teacher, which is lovely. And we love teachers. My mom's a teacher, so it's not anything against teachers. But if they don't have an experience in the publishing industry with working with books, maybe they're a friend, or maybe there's somebody who, is just getting started. That's great. But if the point is, we look at it and we see, and if our review says, you know what, this is solid, this is pretty good, we don't need it, we could make it up on a nice, heavy, strong copy edit, then no, we don't include that. If we look at it and we're like, we're still missing some things and there's still opportunity here, then we do include it. But we have had opportunity, especially to disclose that in the submission form. Hey, I utilize a developmental editor who has, and you can maybe say has experience XYZ, years in the industry or something like that. But it's always nice to disclose that on the submission form, that you have had it developmentally edited. But again, if you have, it's usually going to be reflected in your piece. So, but it is nice to know. Amy, did I miss anything in regards to that?
Yeah, the one thing I'll add to that is that in most cases, an extra set of eyes on your manuscript is not going to be a bad thing anyway. So even if a publisher comes back to you and says, yeah, we do recommend a second developmental edit, I wouldn't feel crestfallen about that. It could just be that, maybe they saw some, editing can be very subjective. Same with the way that we read a book. What one person's going to get out of a novel is different than what another person's going to get out of a novel. So it can be to your benefit to have more people review it. Now, with that being said, if you've already had your book edited by a professional editor who has credentials, who has edited a lot of books in your genre before, and a publisher comes back to you and recommends a second developmental edit, it's perfectly okay to ask them, hey, why? What is it that you are looking at, and what does your editor recommend? That way, at least you know kind of what direction they want to take it in. So
That's awesome. So we are at 5 minutes until, and let's see. Oh, okay. We had another question. Sorry, I missed that one. Oh, okay. Sorry, guys. We had some questions in the Q&A box. So first, let's see. Do I retain full copyright to my book? That's a very good question.
Yes, that's a quick answer. Yes, absolutely. So, you do own the copyright to your book. You are basically lending it to us during that process. And when I say that, it means that when we market it, when we publish it, we are using an ISBN that the publisher owns. So we are using that. So essentially, what you're doing in signing that contract is you're lending us the ability to work with you on the rights to your book. And if you choose to self-publish in the future at any point, you will need to get another ISBN. But again, the copyright belongs to you, and we always, I think it's always important for the authors to go ahead and copyright their work, once we're done with that editing process and publish. So.
Okay. Two more quick questions, I think. How can authors improve the musicality of their writing before submission? This might be an Amy question.
Yeah, I love that question. Always read your work out loud. So read it to a significant other or friend or family member. If you find a place where you stumble, particularly if you stumble in the same place twice, then that may be a place that needs some work. Another good rule of thumb is that if a sentence is difficult and laborious to write, it is going to be difficult to read, and it's going to sound like it was difficult to write. So if you're having one of those writing days where, you are struggling to write 5 sentences and you're like, I've overworked it, maybe those are 5 sentences that the next day you're just gonna put in another document and save for later. Like maybe you just needed to get it out of your system, because when the musicality is there, I always find it's easier to write and it's easier to read out loud.
Perfect. And then do you accept authors who actually do have representation anyways, or prefer that they have no representation?
That's a good one. So we have had agents bring us works before. So some of it depends upon your relationship with your agent. So I think you need to make sure you're talking to your agent specifically in regard to that answer, if they're allowing you to pitch it out to hybrids or whatnot. But there are times I've got a few agents who've reached out to us and said, hey, we understand hybrid. Maybe this isn't a genre, this isn't a situation that certain traditional publishers are accepting at the moment, but we think it's got merit, etc. And they submit it to us through that hybrid. Again, it's still hybrid. The biggest thing is if you have an agreement with your particular agent in regard to, any representation, then that would be kind of on you to have that conversation with. But we have worked with folks who've referred others to us that way. There was one more that I did see that was a quick answer that I wanted to hit really quickly.
Was it about the children's book illustrations and if the person owns them, if they get
Yes.
them through you?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. So that's a quick answer. Ish. Technically, they own the illustration. It's a work for an art for hire, or work for hire. So they own them only in regard to utilizing them in that book. So you can't, unless we agree upon and have that conversation with the artist originally in the negotiation in the beginning of the process, like, hey, they want to use it for t-shirts and sell merchandise and all these other things, then they are not allowed to utilize that. If they have that conversation originally and it's known that they want to use it also in merchandise that they sell, then that's something that they could potentially have the capabilities. It's just a different type of licensing and acquisition agreement. But typically you're allowed to use it in marketing related. Like I could put something on a bookmark that's handed out or a poster that's handed out, or maybe if the author wears a shirt, but if there's something that's being sold, that has to be negotiated in the very beginning.
That's a great
Or
answer.
if it's going to use in previous, like if subsequent books are going to come out, again, you can utilize style, but you can't copy and paste it through AI and use those characters. Like that's not okay either. So there you go.
Great point. Protect our artists too, right? So
Yeah,
thank
for
you
sure.
so much. I want to just send a huge shout out to Warren Publishing, one of our premium sponsors for the Women in Publishing Summit. We thank you guys so much for being here. I dropped their link in the comments there for you guys. Please check them out. Send them more questions if you have them, and you'll get to see them again during our summit. So Mindy, Lacey,
Yay.
and Amy, thank you guys for being with us today.
Thank you. And we are happy to have any conversation in more specifics. This is what I love to do is be able to answer questions and I could talk all day long on things and sometimes do. So feel free if you want to schedule a time to have a conversation specifically about your particular question, send us an email and we're happy to do that. So thank you guys.
Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too.